Okay, so now we're going to be practicing some of our sample questions. On your unit test, which will be open up next week, you're going to have 5 questions that will say solve by factoring. So what you're going to learn is the first 15 questions will just say factor completely. Remember, when it says factor completely, you're going to look for GCF, you're going to see how many terms to know if you can do grouping or shortcut or arch, or if it has 2 terms, difference of squares. And then once you factor out completely, you leave your answers with parentheses and your GCF if you have one. The last 5 are the ones that will say solve by factoring. These are the ones where you're going to have the variable. It would be A equals a number. B equals maybe a fraction, 2/3. You're going to get these types of answers. So this will say solve by factoring. You'll notice that these have the equal signs. So how do I do this one? Again, we always said solve by factoring, 4 steps. Is this good or bad is step 1. Since I don't see a 0, it's bad. Step 2, if it's bad, how do I make it good? Move the 6a over. How do you move? Remember, because there's a left and a right, because we have an equal sign. Opposite sign. So this would be a negative 6a. Make this a negative 6a. Because these guys are different, you're going to cancel them out, and this will be a 0. And then once this is 0, you know 18a squared minus 6a, they're not like terms. Keep them separate. Now focus on the all term side. Step 3. Focusing on the all term side, see if you can factor this out. Now when you factor this out, besides looking at and saying it's 2 terms, you always want to see, is there a GCF? And you can say yes. Remember the 4 ones, A through D, matching parentheses? No. Do you have the same letter in each term? Yes, that means there's a GCF. Do you have the same number? Hopefully you recognize that 18 is 3 times 6, so you can take out a 6 out of each term. And then does it start with a negative? No. So at least we know our GCF. So if I take out a GCF by dividing each term by 6a, then I'm going to be left with 3a, and then 6a divided by 6a. Anytime you divide by the same item, it's not 0, it's 1. Because if you don't put a 1 here, if you distribute, you're not going to get the original. Now that you're done factoring out a GCF, look at your leftovers. Can I do difference of squares? Yes, for there's a minus sign between the 2 terms, but 3 and a are not perfect squares. 1 is, but 3 and a is not perfect squares. If one piece is not a perfect square, we cannot factor out any further as difference of squares. Now, because it says solve, remember our answer has to be a equals. Okay, not 6a. So we got to take each of the GCFs and each of the parentheses and set them equal to 0. So do not leave your final answer like this. And Alex, they're going to mark it wrong. They want your answer to be a equals. So the only way to do that is take the GCF, set it equal to 0. Then solve for a. Since this is a coefficient, divide each side by 6. And you get a equals 0. Then take the binomial, the parentheses, and set that equal to 0. Get a by itself. Remember, you want variables on this side, constants on this side. So you know that this one needs to move. You need to move the constants first. Add 1 to both sides, additive inverse, they cancel out. Now, divorce. Remember, coefficients you divide. So you're going to divide both sides by 3. Remember how I said you can have a fraction as your answer? So there's our 2 answers. A equals 0, and a equals 1/3. So your answers can be fractions. How did I know I was going to get 2 answers? Our original problem had 18a squared. The squared meant two answers. 1, 2.